Westminster across the road from here, and as Parliamentary Warden, I'm going to be there at that service. What I want to raise is something that I want the Minister to get others together and have a meeting with me and with the representatives of the former Sergeant Gurpal Virdi, an excellent police officer. In my past constituency, I represented the family of Stephen Lawrence after he'd been attacked. One police officer in that investigation did well, many others did not. There was a similar attack, not a fatal one, on a foreign student in Ealing, where Gurpal Virdi left his police station, found two of the suspects, found the attack weapon, went to see the family. Later on, he asked whether the attack had been recorded as potentially racist. When he came back from holiday, his home was turned over by a terrorist search squad because he was thought to have sent a message to himself saying, "National Front, you're not wanted here." He was Sikh. This message was also received by other minority ethnic officers. There's no need to take too many notes because most of it's recorded in a book he's published called Behind the Blue Line, where I contributed one of the forewords, and the other one was contributed by Dr. Richard Stone, the Jewish human rights doctor who was one of the advisors on the Macpherson inquiry, the Stephen Lawrence inquiry. So both Richard Stone and I knew what we were writing about, and we know Gurpal Virdi. Gurpal Virdi managed to get out of the difficulties that some people in the police were putting on him. He was later commended by Bernard Hogan Howe when Deputy Commissioner. One of his tasks in the police was working in the Battersea Police Station, where one of the sergeants was Cressida Dick. So people who've been at the top of the Metropolitan Police Service have known about him and his case for a long time. In 2014, I wrote to the Commissioner of Police, Director of Public Prosecutions, the Home Secretary, explaining why the proposed prosecution of Gurpal Virdi for what was originally described as indecently assaulting someone under the age of 16 in a police van in 1986 was an impossible prosecution and should not go ahead. The prosecution did go ahead, and after a week and a half's trial in Southwark Crown Court, ending on the 31st of July 2015, where the jury took about 50 minutes to come back to court with their conclusion. So if you allow them 10 minutes to get back to the jury room, 5 minutes to go to the restroom, 5 minutes to have a discussion, 10 minutes to get back to the court, you can see how long it took them to decide that the case was not a proper one to have brought, and innocence was established. I then asked if the police could review how this prosecution happened, asked the Crown Prosecution Service how it happened, I asked the Attorney General how it happened. What's now the Independent Office of Police Complaints put to the Metropolitan Police the question of whether they'd acted properly. The Metropolitan Police referred this to their Department of Professional Standards. Most cases of historic sex abuse were investigated by the Sapphire Group. Sapphire Group weren't interested in this. They passed it to the Department of Professional Standards, who are the people who actually did the investigation. So when the IOPC, or what it was called in those days, referred it to them, the Department of Professional Standards came to the conclusion, nothing wrong here. Well, I'm now going to spell out quite briefly some of the things which were wrong. First of all, the Metropolitan Police and CPS held a press briefing announcing that Gurpal Virdi had assaulted somebody under the age of 16. They had known from the day after they started investigating that the complainant was over 16. They accused Gurpal Virdi of using a collateral police baton up the bottom of this young man, with another police officer in the back of the van, another one in the front. They've never found the driver, and the person they believe was the other person in the van, first of all denied there was an assault, secondly said the arrest was in a different place from the one the complainant said, thirdly it was a different kind of police van, fourthly there was no serious assault, and most importantly, there was no collateral police truncheon or baton. That's not a big surprise, because these events were in 1986, allegedly. Police batons, collateral ones, were issued in 1995, 7 years later. This case was supervised by a gold group at Scotland Yard, senior officers with the CPS. How did they manage to notice, or not to notice, that the case was impossible? I could go on at greater length, but I put this point through the Minister to those responsible. When we have this meeting, I would like them to explain how the prosecution managed to avoid paying any attention to the only documentary evidence that was left. Gurpal Virdi's notebooks had been taken by the police and destroyed. What was available was a conviction notice in the Lambeth East Juvenile Court from spring 1987 about the complainant. He had been arrested a month before by an officer with Gurpal Virdi. The complainant never mentioned that arrest, which definitely did take place. He made up nonsense about the time he was arrested in the autumn of 1986, where there was no evidence whatsoever that Gurpal Virdi was involved. Other officers were named. The officer in charge is named. The officer in charge made no statement. When asked, he said, "I know nothing about it." If the complainant thought he had been mistreated by Gurpal Virdi in the autumn of 1986, you'd expect that he would have mentioned this at the time of his arrest, which certainly did happen in spring of 1987. He didn't. He didn't mention that arrest at all. The investigating officers didn't even interview the other police officer who is known to be part of that arrest. This is a level of either incompetence or targeting of a good police officer. I want the police, the Independent Office of Police Conduct, the Crown Prosecution Service, and ministers to get together in a meeting, preferably with me, Gurpal Virdi, and his lawyer, Matt Foote, of Bernberg Pierce, and actually go through what needs establishing so that people can have confidence in the Metropolitan Police going forward. If they decline, that confidence is not going to be returned. We've all heard Sir Mark Rowley speaking recently about historic things which he's going to put right. We've heard about the officers he says he doesn't want to keep in his force. Many of those involved in what I've been talking about will have retired. I wish them no ill, but I want to know that no person like Gurpal Virdi, one of the best people I've known, could be subject not only to what happened earlier on about the racist material he didn't produce, but to be put through after he's retired with a totally bogus charge where all the evidence available showed that he was not involved, the crime didn't happen, couldn't have happened, and I'm not satisfied and I won't be. So if I have to come back this time next year for another joint debate, I will, but I will name names. I will name the names of every officer involved, everyone involved in the CPS, and the others. I prefer not to. I prefer to get them sorted out. I believe if the Commissioner agreed with the IOPC and the CPS, they'd get two people to look together at what was available, what happened. They could then produce a report. The Metropolitan Police could then say they learned the lessons, and if they felt like it, they could apologise to Gurpal Virdi for the third time.
Caroline Harris.